Ooh, hello everybody, it's Simon here again from Presentation Genius. A real quickie this time, a bit of a rant, a bit of a helpy bit, because it's all about storytelling in presenting, and there's a couple of things that I just need to get off my chest which you're going to find quite helpful if you have been one of these people who's been bombarded with the montage of you've got to tell stories, 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 and it just feels like a record stuck on repeat. I've just realised I've used an analogy there that nobody under the age of 30 is going to know because they've never heard a record stuck on repeat. Isn't that terrifying? Okay, so the big issue here is that this tell stories, tell stories, tell stories doesn't actually get to the bottom of the problem, which is all about using stories, because I've heard a lot of people saying, you've got to tell the story of how you got the data, you've got to tell the story of how you got here, you've got to tell the story of how your data came to be and all of that kind of jazz. And frankly, if the gods of the internet would allow, I would swear at this point and I would call it actually what it is utter tosh. Why? Because nobody cares about the story about how the data came to be. Well, that's not quite true, but bear with me for a second. What people care about is the story in the data. What is the story of the data? What is the story telling them? What is the data, what is the data telling them? That's what they want to know about. You've only got a limited amount of time on stage, so why would you waste everybody's time telling them about the 2 o'clock in the mornings that you spent trying to clean databases? Trust me, as a researcher, I have spent more time 2 o'clock in the morning banging my head against a brick wall wondering why the flipping heck I'd got men in my database who were pregnant apparently. We used to call it PMS. And you know what? To prove how little imagination research scientists have got, we didn't see the acronym. We just used to call it Pregnant Man Syndrome or PMS, and we didn't really realise what we were saying. How flipping shocking is that? However, what Pregnant Man Syndrome is that in every database, you've got the equivalent of a question which says, are you pregnant? Yeah. Are you male? Yeah. And at that point, you just have to decide whether you change one of those variables, whether you change both of those answers, or whether you just decide that person's answers are not worth listening to because they're clearly too thick to have bait. Right, you get the idea. That's where the hint, that's where the strap is, that's where the rant is. Get over yourself, because nobody wants to hear about all of that kind of stuff. What they want to know about is, what does the data tell them? And they will only be interested in how you got the data if they have already bought into what the data is telling them. So don't tell the story of your data, tell the story in your data. And I don't care how reluctant you are to do that, that's the way it's got to be if you want your presentations to really knock your audience out of the park. And by knock them out of the park, I mean have a flipping effect. So that's it. That's me done. Rant over. Don't tell the story about the data, of the data. Tell the story that is in the data. Have fun. Speak to you soon. Stay safe.